That's one small step for man.
AI rebels face.
Giant leap for mankind.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the AI Rebels podcast. As always, I am your co-host, Spencer.
And I am your other co-host, Jacob. And we are very excited to have Barbara Wittman here with us today. She's the founder of Digital Wisdom Collective. She does all kinds of very interesting work, which we're excited to talk about. But Barbara works a lot with CIOs, transformation leaders, trying to tackle a lot of topics and issues that people ignore, like the human operating layer involved with AI. She has a very interesting background, so we're excited to dig into it. Thanks for coming on, Barbara.
Thanks for having me.
We were chatting with Barbara before the show, and Barbara, you're there in Denver, right? Or outside of Denver?
I'm north of Denver. I moved to Loveland, Colorado 10 years ago for love. You know,
Fitting, very fitting.
Hey, I didn't pick the town for that. But I actually grew up in Germany, south of Munich.
And how old were you when you moved?
40. So
40.
It's
okay.
Yeah. So I'm getting on. I'm turning into an old woman here in America.
You're just wise. You're just wise. We need some wisdom here. There's too many young people.
We do.
So I'm actually curious, before we get into things, does Denver have much of an AI community?
Yes, AI and actually quantum. So everything.
Oh, interesting.
Everything that is going into the new area of technology and how we use it. There's a lot of startups here. It's pretty crazy. We also have a ton of space startups that are consuming that technology. So we are dubbed the new Silicon Valley, or some people call it the Silicon Mountains.
I love that.
Yeah. There's I know of I'm blanking on the name right now, but there's a couple quantum startups out of Boulder that I've followed loosely. It's interesting to see the space develop and continue to grow out there.
It's crazy. It's like they call it the Quantum Alley. I mean, there's like a whole area that's just
I like that, the Quantum Alley.
Layered.
Sounds like something from Harry Potter.
Well, hey, it's a magical place. You guys ought to come sometime.
I'll have to check it out.
I agree. Actually, I have a brother in Boulder, and it was fascinating driving down the street and recognizing a bunch of logos that I see on Twitter all the time.
That's interesting.
I've got friends there.
Yeah.
No, I mean all the big tech companies they by now have a headquarter here of sorts.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Interesting. Barbara, you reached out initially, if I remember right, after an episode where I don't know if we use this phrasing, but essentially talked about how AI isn't magic. So I'm curious, if AI is not magic, what are some of the maybe false beliefs people still have about AI from your perspective that just aren't real?
Oh man, I don't want this to take all the episode here. So everyone is still looking at AI as the magic wand that will fix everything.
Mm-hmm.
And no one can really grasp it, really. So everyone has a different understanding of what it is. But essentially, everyone thinks it's the unicorn pooping rainbows. So
that's true.
And for a lot of companies, it actually is, it's like the magic thing that's going to fix something that has been broken for a very long time. That may be a layered problem that you would have to dig down deeper to actually fix the root cause. So inherently, it shows that everyone is building things on assumptions, and no one really talks about it. Everyone is ashamed about it. It's like, I didn't understand what it is, but everyone is nodding, so I better hop along, right?
100%.
And it's also the inability to really dig into the root cause. It's so much easier to just kind of wash over and fix the symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. And it's I've had a similar concern as well with AI, in that I think that and I've been a proponent of solving things with technology many times, because I think that that's a valid frame of analysis. But I do worry that sometimes, especially with AI, that we veer too far into techno solutionism and overlook some simpler social fixes or political fixes, or what procedural fixes even, and we just want we don't want to do any introspection about the constructs we've created, and we just want to we want to throw another layer of abstraction at it and hope that all of the problems are filled in with gold.
No, absolutely. And beginning of last year, I had a short stint of an interim CIO in a company, and it was interesting to be on the other side of the fence. It ain't pretty, by the way. So
it's not greener.
No, it's not greener. But of course, I also had to deal with a lot of AI questions, use cases that came out of the organization that if you pick them apart, they really were issues that started way sooner in the food chain. That an issue that could have been used by having better product coming in, higher quality product, but instead we are trying to fix it at the end of the chain and say, well, let's see how technology can help us. So but I think AI is just sort of bubbling things up that have been brewing for very long, because we have been looking at technology to be the fix for many things, and we've also pointed at IT as the bad people who are not doing things fast enough, or not saving enough money and so on. And now all of a sudden we are seeing that the thing we have been preaching, that, oh yeah, business and IT is so aligned, we don't have an issue here. All of a sudden you throw that new thing with 2 letters on top and it's like, oh, we have a ton of things.
Yeah, I think you're right. It really surfaces AI. I'm going through an interesting experience at the company I work for, where someone on my team actually built a solution, an app using AI. Really awesome. It helps automate something that we do week over week. And he kind of was like, okay, can I use this? And now it's, sitting with IT, as it, makes sense. They need to look at it, make sure everything's secure. But it's been interesting to see the questions that it's forced to be discussed, because all of a sudden people are having to grapple with these new but old questions of, okay, there's a new solution, there's a new tool, how do we integrate this, how do we get this going? But now it's just accentuated because of AI, and there's this strange layer on top of it that a senior revenue accountant built this tool. This wasn't someone on the engineering team. And so it's surfacing a lot of hard questions.
And it's good, but it speaks for your culture in the company that these questions can surface and they are looked at. And it may take a while to to chew through it a little bit, but it really is. I mean, AI is provoking an identity shift in a way. It forces to ask IT leaders if they want to step into a bigger role, because they essentially have to. Right now, a responsibility is thrown on top of them that they cannot really fully control, right? So it's like, well, here you go, implement that tool, but what are the consequences for it? So ownership is forced without really having the power to steer in a fuller picture. Also, it forces the culture of a company, and also, the what are we here for as a company, to become clearer. It's like, so who do you want to be when you grow up? Where do you want to spend your time, essentially?
Right. So where does the Digital Wisdom Collective fit in all of this? What's kind of the big idea with that?
Well, the big idea was born from me fixing broken transformation projects for 25 years and being very tired of always being called in as a consultant when things went sideways.
Got it.
And I always found exactly the same patterns. That it was never a technology issue. It was always a human issue. And not saying that there's intelligence missing in the organization. What was missing was really collaboration, breaking down the silos, empowering the people that are actually executing and seeing what may be wrong, and really getting better judgment into teams. What are unintended consequences we may be dealing with, debunk assumptions, and so on. So I was asking myself, how can I turn the equation around? How can I pack everything I've learned into a toolbox and actually empower organizations and their leaders to upgrade their humans?
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, is the layer that's totally missing in this AI game.
You keep using the word assumptions, and I really like that because it's a framework for analyzing the world that I enjoy as well, of figuring out what are the hidden assumptions here that we're making.
Mm-hmm.
On that note, what are some common hidden assumptions that you see companies making that they don't even realize that they're making, especially as it relates to AI? I'm sure that there's we could probably spend the whole episode talking about just the hidden assumptions that people make.
Oh man, that there's like so many, but let's use an example. The board comes around and says, you guys ought to use more AI. Their assumption is, if we don't use that now, we're going to be left behind the competition. They
Right.
kick it down to the CEO, and he's like, oh my God, I better do something about it, because otherwise my head is rolling. An assumption.
Yeah.
And he kicks it to the IT guy, and the IT guy pushes back a little bit and asks, relevant questions. The assumption of the CEO is, oh, it's the IT dude again. He's making things difficult. I better give it to somebody else. So, it really shows a little bit of the human dysfunction in many ways, and it's things that we don't talk about. And to debunk these things, I run a workshop called Mindset Before Machines, where we go through an example with different levels in the organization, and we just kind of piece it apart. And for the better part, AI use cases that are thrown into the exercise are not an AI use case at the end.
I really love this. I think this is like the epitome. Like, your organization is getting at something Spencer and I talk about all the time, that AI, and I can't stress it enough when I talk to people, so many of the issues people have with AI is not AI. It's the people using AI. It's
Correct.
not, it's the issues AI is surfacing, but AI is just a technology. It's just a tool. It's not currently, someday it might be, but right now it's not an independent thinking, acting being.
Right.
It's purely a tool acting as instructed.
Yeah. But, coming back to the assumptions, I think the biggest assumptions also on the execution layer then is, it's going to take my job,
Right.
and it's going to be smarter than me, it's going to be better and faster than me. But it all stems in an insecurity of what the individual person actually contributes as value.
Yeah.
So it really kind of shakes our foundation as a human to say, well, but who am I then? When AI is coming in and doing all these things better. I mean, to me, this is amazing, because I'm like, wow, I can be innovative. I can spend my time so much smarter. But for other people, it's landing in other ways.
Yeah, no, it's a hard bridge to get, or excuse me, a hard gap to bridge. I was going to say that backwards. And I feel like part of why Jake and I started this podcast actually is to kind of start finding answers to these questions.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I don't think that we're any closer than the day we started. But in some ways, that's more exciting, because the reason for it is that AI keeps advancing at an incredible rate. How do you advise companies on, maintaining identity in times of incredible change like this?
Yeah. So our human way of reacting to it is to build more rules. right? And we're
Right.
talking about governance frameworks and whatnot.
Right.
And I'm saying, hey, let's scale it back a little bit. Let's take it a little bit lighter. Not saying that governance is entirely wrong. We need it, but we need frameworks that people understand. And that's why I work with what are our core values as a company, and then use the values to really derive decisions.
Mhm.
Based on our values, how do we want to use AI? You need to give people something that they can relate to. And, you got to explain things in a very simple way. So if you give them 3 values and you kind of make decisions around it, and when to use AI, when not to use AI, that is a framework that's simple to grasp.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is you need to give people almost like a compass, an orientation. In the olden days, and yes, I'm older generation. When we still had maps, when we went on road trips, people need these maps again. They need to have some visual orientation. Let's say in a process, this is the value chain, and this is where we want to use AI to make it better. You have to bring in visuals and examples where you can bring people along, so you explain the why and the how.
I like that. I'm so glad that other people are thinking in terms of maps as well. Because something as AI was starting to take off, and I started to consider, the social implications of, a new type of video and image manipulation technology, and what that means for our ability to, ascertain truth. Right. I keep coming back to this example of Micronesian sailors populating Pacific islands long before they had compasses, sextants, maps. And the way that they did it was they built the academic term now, the anthropological term now is stick charts. They would build these really elaborate charts out of woven sticks, mapping out not where islands are, but rather patterns in waves and patterns in currents. And in doing so, you would go look at this chart that some ancient sailor had made before you. You would memorize that chart, and then you'd go out and sail. And by memorizing that chart, you can see, oh, hey, the waves are behaving in this way. There's probably an island over there. And so I find, and I have not yet figured out how to framework this into something more interesting at a broader social scale. But I do think that it's important that we start thinking about how do we lay down mental patterns for others to follow, and how do we make sure that those mental patterns are competent and up to the task.
Exactly. And you're hitting something here, because we really need to simplify things in order to understand complexity again. And where I actually got very inspired was hiking in a forest close to where I live. And the native people of the region, they had way marker trees. So they would, only certain people would know how to bend the tree in a certain way, and it would give you direction. It is a living thing that grows with the forest, so even today you can still find them. And by orientating through the forest, just following these way markers, you would be able to find your path and find the next pilgrimage place, or whatever. And I'm like, wow, so if what we are building here, at a crazy speed, AI agents, technology solutions, if that is like a really untended forest, how do we navigate?
Yeah, 100%. And I think part of it is it's moving so fast that maybe there's an organization out there doing this, but I feel like there's not a good record being maintained of the lessons learned and the do's and the don'ts. And hey, look at these back to your example, Spencer, like there's a reef over here, like don't even mess with that area. And like, I saw, why can I not think of his name? CEO of Anthropic,
Dario Amodei.
Amodei, thank you. He was just having to deal with the United States government because they are wanting full access to Claude without any restrictions. And he was like, look, I'll work with you and give you more access than maybe Jacob over in Boston. But like, we have hard lines here. I'm not going to allow
Mhm.
AI to fire a weapon without human
Yeah.
involvement. And
Yeah.
he had like a few other things like that, which makes sense. And I think we need to figure out where those lines are, where the reefs are, and it's just moving so fast though. It's like we can make a map of something, but then it just expands, and it's really, really difficult.
It's a yes and. So here's my take of things. I believe
Mhm.
we are overcomplicating everything we do. If we do draw a map, it needs to be so high level that it's static. Because
I like it. Yeah.
when we draw maps, or if we are documenting processes or models or workflows, it's always on the super detailed level, and that's what gets us killed, because it changes. And then how do you keep up the
Yeah.
model? But if you cannot explain your AI strategy, it's like a good business model on the back of a napkin, you're doomed. So
Yeah.
you need to come up with a picture that's static, that fits on a PowerPoint, that you can repeat like a prayer. Always, always. Every meeting, every board meeting, every leadership meeting, every like project meeting, you pull this thing up and say, hey, this is where we're coming from. Then you go into, this is our values that we base our actions on. So,
Mhm.
we are taking so many things for granted, and we don't use very simple tools to stabilize. And repetition is a way of learning, of stabilizing, of getting us back to, oh, this is what we want, right? Because in this
Mhm.
fast-paced, everything going, faster than the speed of light, things are changing. And what we used to call scope creep happens at a breakneck speed, because we
Yeah.
don't anchor. We don't say, hey, but this is what we set out here, because it's like so many, oh, squirrel, ooh, something new.
Right. Yeah. We keep getting sidetracked.
And the other thing that you were alluding to, we don't really learn, we don't really document, and it's so hard to document because it's so fast. And what do you document? What is the
Mhm.
pattern? And I think we need to get better, and this is what we do in the collective. We bring cross industry leaders together, and they can bring in their challenge, and then we collectively figure out how to move forward.
Hmm.
So we need to learn. That's what I call sense making. To bring
Yeah.
different angles together, different experiences together, and we need to get better at patterns. What do we
Mhm.
see? So people that are part of the collective also get a pattern recognition newsletter from me once a
That's
month,
great.
where it's like, hey, what do I see in conversations within our community? What do I see happening outside? Because we need to get better at figuring out what the signals are.
Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah. People
like
are so
that.
enamored with the technology. I think we're
Yeah.
overlooking some of the most important things, which again this isn't a new trend. I think that's another thing. We're getting sucked in to think that this is a new moment in history that we've never experienced before. And it's not. In living people's lifetimes, we've had cell phone, internet, or iPhone, internet, like all these huge things that had a similar cycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
so, I mean,
even
really, we could go back and look at those, but I don't think we are doing that enough.
we are not doing that enough. And I always compare it with the gold rush. And it's sort of the same thing. Like everyone is running out. It's like, oh my god, I gotta get rich fast.
Yeah.
But if you peel back the layer, the companies that really made it through and that are still doing great were the ones selling the shovels and the pans.
Mhm.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the most basic, the most simple things.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you say wisdom,
Mhm.
like I feel like that's a very specific word, digital wisdom. It's not digital intelligence. It's not digital anything. Like, what does that mean?
That means that we need to upgrade us. That is the core understanding here. So wisdom, to me, is the ability to really bring judgment into a situation, to really take
Hmm.
myself out of the way and not bring in the things that I believe, and I become a facilitator in what the group is looking at, what the experiences we have. So it's the ability to neutralize yourself in service of the bigger.
Yeah, I like that. Being
And
able
what
to
does
bring
this look
judgment
like?
in.
What does that look like in action, like inside of a company? How do you advise people to embody that?
Well, that's where the mindset upgrade comes in. So what I install in companies is what I call ecosystem stewards, because we need to start thinking about ecosystems again. We cannot think hierarchical anymore. We need to kind of see how are things connected. That's all the magic. And ecosystem stewards are basically like the market tree in the dense forest. And they have upgraded their own mindset where they are not bogged down by beliefs they have, where it's like, and we all know that, right? We get a new initiative in, and they're like, oh, that's going to fail. I know it. We've tried that before, just a different angle. So there are people that can imagine, and that's what we need in the age of AI. But it's also people that bring in a good sense of judgment, and they rub off. The whole idea is that excitement and clarity ripples. So that makes the entire change process a little bit easier to digest for organizations, because we also think that, oh my God, we got to train 100 people. And that's not true, because where change happens is in the middle. And if you have about 20% trained of your core people executing, that's when the magic happens.
So you said clarity ripples. Excuse me. You said excitement and clarity ripples. Excitement rippling is clear to me how that would happen. I'd love to hear a little bit more on what you mean by clarity ripples and how that happens mechanically.
It's first of all having the map that we talked about. It's understanding what we all are looking at. It's also having the same language we use. We understand when we talk about scope, what scope actually means. And it's also holding a leadership stance of clarity. It's making a decision and standing behind it, and also understanding what are the trade-offs or what are potentially second-order effects from it. So that is clarity. So everyone around me is able to say, yes, if that decision is made, this is where we march, and I'm not changing my mind 5 minutes down the road.
So, I mean, this whole initiative trying to foster digital wisdom in companies and organizations, I think I remember seeing you say somewhere that it really should be like this human infrastructure idea should be a budget line. There should be an allocation here to make sure this is happening. So I'm just thinking, within an organization, how would you sell that to, say, the CFO, the keeper of the budget? What would you say is the benefits there?
It's increasing execution efficiency. God, hard word.
I like that. That sounds good, though.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, and if you look at studies from Project Management Institute, you are losing a lot of money just by collaboration friction, by clarity not being transported, by rework. And that amounts to being about 100,000 in $1 million in budget line. And that is a crazy amount. So you can make a case for it. Is it harder to measure? Absolutely. Because what you would see at the end of the day is fewer escalations, less firefighting. It's not the one person in the organization that always fixes everything. It's more broadly distributed. So you're taking out your single point of failure. It's harder to measure. What I have seen, though, in organizations is that by empowering the execution layer, you can lower your consulting spend. So,
totally.
Over the past 2 years, from companies that worked with me, it's about 20% they can save, and that's a pretty penny.
That's huge. Yeah.
So you're like the no soliciting sticker salesman going door to door.
In
I'm a
a way,
consultant
yeah.
who will help you lower your consultant costs.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I mean, being a consultant for so long, I just got tired of it. It's a model
Yeah.
that I love supporting when it comes to very specific advice, and I'm
Yeah.
called in to review something or whatever. But a lot of companies are using consultants to really bring judgment and decision clarity into the company, and that's not right.
Yeah.
As firefighters and to come in and
Yeah.
fix
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
I like that.
That makes sense. No, I think this touches on a larger theme that I think is gaining traction. Like I've seen it at my own company, but it's this idea that there needs to be education and accountability,
Yeah.
which I don't think has been really tied to AI at this point, because it's been such a rush. All of a
Mhm.
sudden people are like, okay, wait, back up. Who's even responsible for this at the company? And then how are we going to accomplish these goals? It can't just be one person. So we need to educate people.
Yeah.
And that accountability, I think, is really important, both AI at large, but also within organizations. I think until you really understand the map, we keep coming back to the map, until you understand the map and who's accountable for getting there, you're never going to move. You're not going to move the needle. So I think this is a crucial cause.
Yeah. But, we also have to think in a new way about how we learn and how we actually upgrade the humans. Because, if you compare what we do in technology, to me, it's totally hideous that, we drop a course on humans and then we think they are like ready to roll and hey, you're good to go.
So true.
We would never do that with software. With software, we have a test environment. We upgrade, we test meticulously.
I love this. Yeah.
And then we go live with it. So we don't have that for humans. That's why we have the collective essentially as a testing ground where you can try yourself out. It's like, oh, wow, what happens if I actually speak up in a group? And if I voice my concerns or something, and you can build that muscle and you can go back into your organization and feel more confident.
Yep. Which I think is so cool because AI enables this. AI enables more effective education.
Yeah.
This organization that I was telling Spencer the other day, I'm kind of obsessed with them, even though they're based in Texas. I'm in Boston, far away. I can't even send my kids that I'll have someday to this school. It's called Alpha School. I don't know if you've heard of it, Barbara, but
Yeah.
they are building this entire education platform utilizing both AI, which allows them to condense a 6-hour school day into 2 hours to teach their students everything they need to know and then some. They're top in all of their test scores in the country. And then the rest of the day, they're doing more experiential learning of projects outside. They're going hiking. Yeah. They're doing art projects. They're doing choir. They're doing music. They're doing all these things for the other 75% of the day. But their education, they're top. Like they're beating out these like elite, schools that parents are paying $100,000 a year to send their kids to. And this Alpha School in Texas is just demolishing all the tests with this AI-based condensed learning. And I think that's the next phase of AI that I'm excited for, is when it actually turns to human development. Because I think there's a huge unlock there waiting to happen with education.
That's a yes and. So I love the concept. But for kids, we are letting it slide, right? It's like, oh, cool. They can play out in nature. They can experience and everything.
Yeah.
But for humans, I don't think that's going to fly.
Right.
Because, our thinking, our belief system tells us that we need to be in an office to be productive. I mean, look at the discussion that's going on with home office versus being in office. So I think for that model to move beyond children, where, it's still a little bit of a protected space, we really need to look at what the limiting beliefs are for us as people, for companies, and for our society on how we learn, how we are successful, how we are playing nice together.
Yeah. We need to be more like children. That's what it all comes down to.
Seriously, I think that's one of the things we need to start looking at, being more playful, and
growth mindset, open-minded,
absolutely.
all those things. Oh man, yeah, I totally agree. So what? Obviously, AI amplifies judgment.
Mhm.
Do you think it is more prone to amplifying good judgment or bad judgment more?
Does AI really amplify judgment? Because I think that's an inherent human trait that we should not lose. So
Maybe. Oh, that's a good point. I like that. Maybe it exposes judgment. Maybe that's a better way to say it.
I think AI helps you with decisions, but then judgment really needs to sort out what are valid routes.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see AI in really helping with judgment, because that to me is something that we need to foster within us and in the group of humans we work with.
Yeah.
Judgment is going to be the juice that sends out good and bad AI answers or pathways.
So it doesn't amplify judgment, but it can increase the velocity of decision making.
Yeah.
How do you kind of bridge the gap between the two? How do you foster better judgment on an organizational level so that decisions can be made as rapidly as AI allows them to be made?
Yeah. So judgment and velocity is a little bit of an odd ends, right? And what you need to bring in to kind of bridge it is alignment. And we're back at the maps and other little things, right? And you really need to, and it's counterintuitive. We're also so much about being faster, but you really need to learn to slow down a little bit. To really apply judgment, to align things, and then to take up speed again. And essentially, that's what's going to make us faster at the end of the day, because we are understanding where the assumptions lie. We're understanding, are we fixing the right problem here? So yes, and to a startup founder, it's totally counterintuitive. It's like, we need velocity. That's all we need.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you can kind of relate it to, metaphorically, driving a car, right? You can drive at 90 miles per hour and you'll get there faster, but you're probably going to have to stop for gas more. Or you could drive at 70 miles per hour and you're going to get there slightly slower, but you probably won't have to stop for gas as often.
That's true. And what does it mean stopping for gas more for a startup or for a company? It's right. churn of employees. It's money wasted and so on. So in a way, staying with the car metaphor, since we're at it, you're upgrading the horsepower with AI, and you're building a 1,000 horsepower engine into your car, but digital wisdom basically gives you the ability to steer and brake. Kind of important.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Just a little. Yeah.
Only until you need to stop. Then it's important. Yeah.
Or what do they say? Brakes are for losers. Yeah. So.
But they're alive, the living losers.
True.
Losers.
So I was just going to ask, with this idea, because a lot of the people we have on are founders of these either AI native or just young startups that are now implementing AI, and it's a huge focus on velocity. How would you coach a budding business through this? Like, what are some key points you would emphasize? How would you help a founder, a CEO say, okay, you are young, you're starting this company, please think about XYZ or do these things, or avoid? It could be avoid as well.
Yeah. So the first thing I offer founders is really to draw the maps and make clear where we stand on the technology level, and also what their operating model is, because you would be surprised to hear that a lot of people don't really understand what their operating model is. If you don't understand that, you cannot, have the technology to support it. So that is the first eye-opening exercise, to really say, okay, so what do we have here? And then as a next step, you can say, okay, so it's like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So, the floppy bread doesn't really hold together. So what do we need to install in the middle? And that's where that idea of the human infrastructure comes in. So
Okay.
with very small effort, you can actually gain a lot of clarity already for a founder, and then it's up to them to really go the next steps and go the extra mile. But ideally, if you have a startup, boy, you're in an amazing place to do this thing right, and to not have tech sprawl into crazy things that you never wanted.
Yeah.
And you can create a culture where people are excited to work with you. So taking the step to say, I am educating 3 or 4 people within the organization so we make better decisions from the get-go, and we're actually basing what we do on values, that's immense. That actually makes your investor happy, because you're not just throwing money at the next thing. You're
Right.
you have a coordinated growth.
Right.
Something that I have been fond of saying lately is that it's going to be more important than ever to say no to things. No, we're not going to build that. No, we're not going to pursue that initiative. But as we're talking in this discussion, it occurs to me that I should add a corollary to that, which is that you got to know why you're saying no.
Exactly.
It's equally important to know why you're saying no to something, rather than just I'm supposed to say no to something, so I'm going to say no to this.
So again, if you don't know what your operating model is, you will say yes to anything technology, but it may take you on a track that is, not really bringing money in at the end of the day.
Yeah, which I think is why so many AI initiatives have failed initially, is because it was a rush, a bolt-on. We need this in our board deck, so we needed something AI here. And this idea of taking a step back and evaluating, okay, here's what our business does. Here are our processes. Okay, what actually makes sense? It would make sense if we could automate X, Y, Z. Okay, now let's go find an AI solution for that, instead of this shiny new toy and bringing it in and saying, okay, what can we use this for?
No, exactly. And always the core question, how can you make either the life of your clients better or the life of your employees with an AI solution?
Yep. Yeah.
So you have used the phrase human infrastructure a lot. To you, is there like a common human infrastructure ontology that every business should be rolling out? Or is it more of an organizational company by company basis? Everybody needs something slightly different based on their operating model, their personnel, etc.
It's essentially the same thing, and it slightly differs. So you always have core people that need to be trained up, and that's really a mindset upgrade, and that need to learn how to make decisions together. But at the same time, you need to have a baseline that's created, what I call the shared mental model. And that's the maps, what is the terms we use, why do we make decisions, and so on. That's essentially the same ontology, but it is slightly, different for company by company or in different industries. But it's essentially the same building blocks always. Yeah.
I like that, and I like that you keep coming back to common definitions. I think that is a very underrated point of friction in any type of decision making or dialectical exercise to speak of. You got to be starting from common definitions, and people often don't realize that even just a slight difference in your common definitions, like if Jake and I are operating from slightly different understandings of operating model, we're going to end up at very different locations in the end, and we'll probably have a fight about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And the common thing I heard when I stepped in to fix broken projects, it was always, well, I don't know why we don't make any progress, because the scope is clear. And then when I did ask, so what is the scope? There was silence in the room.
Well, everybody knows it, so we never had to discuss it.
It goes without being said. We just know it,
Yeah. Hey. So.
That's so funny.
So, do you have any suggestions on either education platforms or ways to go about, or just tools in general to educate the human infrastructure to build that up?
we got to step away from tools. We have so
Yeah.
many, I think that's the
Yeah.
last thing. We don't really need more tools.
Mhm.
So, and hey, I got to toot my own horn here. The easiest thing to do is to join the Digital Wisdom Collective. If you are somebody that is in a transformation position, or if you are
Mhm.
essentially curious in your organization on how you can make things better, join the practice. We don't teach you more
Awesome.
tools. It really is about practicing new ways of solving problems.
Yeah.
So that is one piece. The other piece, and that's the
Actually,
baseline.
just real quick
Yeah.
on that first piece, the Digital Wisdom Collective. So what, really quick, I don't think we actually got a clear, obviously you said there's the monthly newsletter, but what other touch points, what does it look like as a member of the Digital Wisdom Collective?
I was going to ask a similar question.
Oh, fun. So you're getting a values assessment when you start, when you're joining, and basically we are basing everything we do amongst the group values. So whoever is joining, the values are changing slightly over the quarter because it is basically a mesh of everyone's identity. So we have a common foundation, and then we have a 4-pillar model that we use for problem solving that we just keep reusing and repeating. And we meet in group sessions where people can bring in challenges that they have at the job, and then we jointly problem solve. And we make sure that we understand the problem before we jump into assumptions or solutions and so on. And it really is a space where you can practice that muscle. Our very simple frameworks that we teach are totally applicable from the start, that you can reuse in your own environment. And we have several sessions over the months. Depending on your schedule, you can join as an active participant or just listening. And then you have different forums where you can, drop your questions and everything. But it's less about active content and yet another place where you can see 1,000 videos that you never have time for. It really is a place where you show up when you need to, and you can address the challenge.
Sounds like it's more human to human too.
It's
more human interactions and conversation.
Yeah.
Which I think is going to have more and more value as we
I agree.
move into this AI world.
I was gonna say something similar. But I think
Same
these human
wavelength.
spaces are more and more important. I think Jake and I have talked about it a lot recently too, in our episodes. I think that it comes up in every single episode. Reinvest yourself into, communities, whether that's digital or physical, preferably physical, but I'll let people slide with digital, but reinvest yourself into real communities.
Yeah. And I mean, the next build out state, or my vision is that I will add experiences to the equation, and I will take people out to nature. So
that's awesome.
Similar to what you described for the kids, if I can do that with IT people and transformation leaders, great.
Yeah. Well, and that it really does ground you, and that's the unlock. It's the best practices that don't change. It's these things we need to internalize and learn for ourselves that are never going to change no matter what the technology is.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think getting out into nature, talking to other leaders, figuring out what works, what doesn't work, that's still the best thing to do. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
It hasn't changed. So I love that. I think 5 years from now, what do you think is going to really separate? And I think I know the answer, but I'm curious what you'll say. 5 years from now, what's going to separate the companies that are still around and those that are no longer there?
Man, less is more. That's a big thing. So the companies that will still be around, I believe, will be smaller companies that were just nimble enough to adopt quicker. It's not the biggest tech stack that's gonna bring you over the finish line. It really is the cohesion between technology, your strategy, and the people.
Which makes sense. It's those who can really utilize the lever. Going back, I don't know if you've heard of Julius AI, but we had on their founder, his name's Rahul, and he came on. And at that point, he was early on, so this was over a year ago now. Now they've grown quite a bit. But initially, they had 500,000, was it right, Spencer? 500,000 users and like
Yeah,
an employee base of like 10 people. It was just
yeah,
the wild, the leverage you could achieve if you're willing to invest and everyone's educated and you know how to use the technology. It's not just
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Very nimble, like you said.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were a unique case where, and perhaps going forward, they won't be such a unique case where, to my memory, he said that everybody on the team wrote code. They had other primary responsibilities, but everybody on the team wrote code and contributed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just it's an entirely different type of organization when everybody has the same type of ability to contribute to the core product. In the case of SaaS.
Yes, no, that's absolutely true. But you're touching on something that's absolutely going to be core. We need to learn functioning as an ecosystem. Like what nature does. The big tree doesn't look down at the small flower and say, "Well, you could be better.
What do you do?"
Yeah, what do you do?
No, I like that you keep coming back to this word ecosystem, because I have a concern with tech in general that oftentimes they are very focused on hierarchical understandings of the world, and because in a lot of cases in an engineering domain, right, that's a coherent way of viewing the world, but most of the world is not engineering. Most of the world is not a closed problem space that is being iterated over. The world is messy. The world is dangerous. The world is changing and hard to conceive of to start with. Like, we need practices that are open-ended and non-hierarchical.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
anyways, I love that you keep bringing up the word ecosystem.
All
I
right.
like that.
I gotta jump, guys.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you're good. I was just going to say,
No
if
worries,
people
I
want
do
to
too.
follow you, Barbara, and follow Digital Wisdom, what are the best ways for them to do that?
So the easiest is to jump on the website, digitalwisdom.co for Colorado. There's a button on there. You can book a 30-minute call with me, and
Awesome.
we can explore how this would fit to your organization. And following me on Substack, that's also an easy way, or LinkedIn as a place.
Okay.
So yeah.
Perfect. We'll
Awesome.
drop links.
All
Thanks
right.
for coming on, Barbara. We're excited to see
Thank
where
you.
Digital Wisdom goes. We'll see you.
Hey, have a good weekend. Bye.